They were once the heroes of Shurima, bathed in the golden light of the sun disk. Now, they are whispers of madness, imprisoned within the very weapons they once held. This is the story of the Darkin, a legacy of blood, ambition, and betrayal. I am going to explain the lore behind the Darkin, the war between Aatrox and Xolaani, where every Darkin we know of today is, and what they're doing. I'm talking Naafiri, Aatrox, Varus, Rhaast, Styraatu, Naganeka, Praa. This will be the most complete Darkin lore video to date. So sit back, relax, and let's learn how the Darkin almost, and may yet, end the world of Runeterra.
All that lives, I will end.
Now to do that, we need to go back to before the fall of a little vassal state of Shurima, known as Icathia. Not too many people left from that place, but one who is left is Zillion, and he just happens to control time. So let's go meet up with that guy, since he said he'd help us with this one. There he is. Hey Zillion.
Yes? Oh, hello.
Got the whole grove here. We're ready to get sent back.
I've seen your death. It was painful.
Another me? Where are you going?
Already there.
Other Zillion, that's kind of a weird thing to say. This doesn't have anything to do with the demon lore video I'm coming out with after this, right?
All in good time.
That doesn't make me feel any better. But you were always a strange one. I'm just gonna ignore you said that. Anyways, Zillion, I got the whole group here. You promised you would send us back to before the sun disk so they can understand Darkin, remember? They need to go back to learn about the Darkin today so we can deal with them in the future RiotMmo. Without that, we end up losing.
Oh dear, I don't like this timeline at all.
I know. You're the one who told me to do it, don't you remember?
Not that I recall, no. Oh dear.
Okay, anyways, I got this and I'm ready to guide them through time like we discussed.
You have an important job to do. We must keep the corruption at bay.
Yep.
Time waits for no one. No one but me. It is now as it would be then.
Perfect. Thanks, Zillion. I got the ancient hourglass and I'll use this to travel through time until we meet up with you again where we left.
One of our more elegant devices.
Cool. So we are now viewing Shurima before the first sun disk rose and fell. Icathia is a vassal state, and the aspects are calling Aurelion Sol to Mount Targon to show him Runeterra. In reality, the aspects are planning to entrap Aurelion Sol. Well, that's not 100% confirmed, but it's pretty easy to speculate, as they are the ones who commanded the mortals to bring forth a suitable offering for Aurelion Sol upon his visit. Keep in mind, it's a fledgling civilization, yet the crown they gifted Aurelion Sol was crafted with careful and cunning magic, and etched with the inscrutable patterns of the celestial realm. So, definitely the aspects. From the moment it touched Aurelion Sol's brow, he knew this was no gift at all. The accursed thing clamped in place with unimaginable force, enough that even he could not remove it. Worse still, the power of the crown hurled him back into the heavens, and prevented him from getting any closer to Runeterra again. The aspects then set him to do their bidding on far-off worlds like a dog on a leash. And as for Runeterra, he was forced to watch as the duplicitous aspects of Targon set the mortals to work in the construction of a sun disk in Shurima. Keep in mind, Aurelion Sol is the star forger. He literally creates suns. So calling it the sun disk is almost a mockery of him. With this, they channeled his celestial power to raise up immortal god warriors for some unknown conflict that was apparently still to come. Aatrox was one of the first to be granted the gift of ascension, a right that was reserved for those near the end of their life who served Shurima well. Other god warriors we know of are characters like Nasus, Renekton, Xolaani, Varus, Rhaast. These were all god warriors of Shurima. At the same time, to the south, the vassal state of Icathia cries out for independence from Shurima, and eventually, an uprising occurs. The city was filled with screams, as baying crowds chased down and murdered every Shuriman official they could find. Resentment for centuries of humiliating laws intended to eradicate their culture, and brutal executions for breaking those laws, came to a head in one blood-filled day of violence. It didn't matter that most of these people were merely scriveneers, merchants, and tilth-takers. They were servants of the hated Sun Emperor and needed to die. Overnight, Icathia was theirs again, but it would not last. Shurima would respond, and against the normal army, perhaps Icathia stood a chance, but Shurima had god warriors, imbued with the power of the sun disk. In desperation, they turned to a power they did not fully understand and unleashed the Void. But the Void has no allies, no allegiances, no borders. It consumed both Shuriman and Icathian alike, devouring all in its path. By battle's end, Icathia was gone. replaced by a cursed wasteland where the void festered and grew. The Shirimans fought for years to contain it. Many fell, even some god warriors. It was only through the heroic actions of the Ascended Aatrox, who found a way to end void corruption by destroying the void hearts found far below the ground, where unknowable beastly horrors were hidden, that the Ascended were able to seal the greatest rifts. But victory came at a cost. The void was merely stalled, not destroyed, and for those who survived, the horrors of that void war never faded. Haunted by the nightmare, some of the Ascended began their descent into darkness. The nature of their corruption is implied to be self-inflicted after the mental scars left behind. And as if things were not already bad, a bunch of super powerful near-god level beings slowly descending into madness, the current emperor at the time, Azir, died during a failed ascension, resulting in the subsequent fall of Shurima and its sun disk. This was the final catalyst that led them to turning their backs on the world they had once sworn to protect. With no emperor to lead them, many of the surviving Ascended God Warriors began to return to their old, petty ambitions. They believed themselves to be the rightful inheritors of the world and enslaved many races, forcing them to worship them. The scattered mortal populace named these tyrants Darkin, a curse translating roughly in ancient High Shuriman as the Fallen. And this is where Xolaani comes in. Xolaani was an Ascended who used her power of hemomancy to heal. She was there in the Icathia Void War and was not exempt from the gradual fall into madness. She aided the Darkin by using her knowledge of blood magic to augment their flesh and weapons. The Darkin mastered other forbidden forms of primal magic as well, crafting their own flesh and armor with equal ease, until they were unrecognizable from the noble warriors they had once been. This is not to say that Xolaani was the only Darkin who had the power of hemomancy. Across the sea, in a kingdom known as Camivore, Vladamir's father traded young Vladamir to an unknown Darkin in exchange for the safety of the kingdom. Taught by the Darkin Master, Vladamir became the first human to learn blood magic, the art of crafting flesh and transmuting blood. Over the course of his life, Vladamir would govern over the Master's subjects. At the same time, unknown to the other Darkin, Xolaani began to use her hemomancy to force her fellow Darkin into her servitude, believing that the only way to end the pointless wars was to forcefully unite the world under her control. And this is not just Darkin. Xolaani used her power of hemomancy to control mortals as well, although the mortals seem to like it, a lot, to the point they come up again later in our story. Only the strongest willed of the Darkin, such as Aatrox, were able to resist Xolaani's control, and resented her attempt to revoke their freedom. This resentment would grow into a deep hatred. The Darkin and their armies would clash with one another in what we know today as the Great Darkin War. There were many Darkin leaders who fought for power with Darkin immortals on their side, but the most prominent in the war were Aatrox and Xolaani.
You never would listen, Aatrox, but now you will.
I will not bend as easily as your puppets, coward!
Which makes sense. Aatrox was the first god warrior and respected by the other Darkin as a general of sorts. As for Xolaani, the earth seemed to shudder to one beat now. Such was the hemomantic power growing within her. She took a moment to observe the battlefield and wept with joy filling her soul. Soon, this world would be united in peace, in love, in silence. Now, Xolaani was no pushover, but despite her ability to turn her foes to her side, Xolaani lacked the strength to stand against the other Darkin, who had countless years more experience in battle than her. As such, she was nearly defeated by Taarosh, only saved by the timely intervention of the Aspect of Twilight, sealing away all remaining Darkin within their weapons. The Aspect of Twilight, by the way, was not Zoe at this time. This was an earlier Aspect of Twilight. However, there is one Darkin who we know was not sealed in their weapon, and that was Vladamir's Darkin Master. Unknown to all but Vladamir himself, it was Vladamir who struck the killing blow. Scarred, blinded, driven mad by the radiance of the Darkin's undoing, he absorbed enough power to renew flesh that was never meant to last beyond a mortal lifespan. And he has done this countless times since, through rituals too vile to speak of.
I am Lord and Master. Behold my glory.
So here we are, all the Darkins sealed away in their weapons, at least the ones still alive, and all are currently in the hands of the Targonian aspects, except one, across the seas in Ionia, where the Darkin War would later be referred to as the War of the False Khanmi, as many of the God Warriors claimed to be great spirits, so false Khanmi, in order to recruit followers. One group heavily involved in this war was the Kinku Order, an ancient organization dedicated to preserving a balance between the physical world and the spirit realm. In present day, it is led by Shen, but at this time, it was led by Master Lao, the Fist of Shadow, who wielded a sacred relic known as the Aeon Urna. At the time of the War of the False Khanmi, Yunara was a Kinku Order acolyte, and during one battle, Lao sacrificed himself to save Yunara from a Darkin. After Lao's death, Yunara took up the Aeon Urna and his mantle as the Fist of Shadow, taking an oath to uphold the balance. The Darkin War continued to rage across the First Lands, and Yunara turned to more desperate measures to defeat them, eventually searching for help in a temple where she prayed to a great spirit to save her people. And although he initially refused, he agreed to help after learning the Darkin were posing as Khanmi. His aid came on one condition: all his enemies would be Yunara's as well. Yunara and the Great Spirit fought together against the false Khanmi and saved the First Lands. When the conflict was over, however, the Spirit revealed to Yunara that he was a Darkin too, and that he was going to exile himself to protect the mortal realm from his own nature. But Yunara refused to leave him and joined him in exile to the Spirit realm, where she kept him contained within the Darkin glaive. Before she left, Yunara gave her word that she would guard the Temple of Twilight and deliver judgments in her name. In the following centuries, Yunara's sacrifice would be remembered in the tale of the devoted Shrine Maiden, and she would remain in the Spirit realm. That is, until the present time, where Wildbloom unexpectedly returned her and her shrine to the mortal realm. At this point, you're probably wondering, well, what happened with all the other Darkin? Being that the aspects of Targon literally had to step in to put an end to the violence and destruction caused by the Darkin, what do they do with these weapons? These weapons that if anyone picks up will be possessed by the Darkin and perhaps end the world all over again. The answer? They throw them in random places around Runeterra. For example, do you know the Chirian, basically the bat-like people from the Sumps of Zaun? These are literally the indigenous people of Zaun. You can see a few of them in Arcane. Well, as the Targonians pondered where they should scatter the Darkin weapons, again, scatter the Darkin weapons, one of their kind suggested the lands that would become known as Zaun. Buried deep within the walls of the cavernous and winding passageways would be perfect, they assumed, and so they yeeted the Darkin harp into the cavern. It was far from human reach, but not Chirian. Styraatu burst through the processing plant, furious and impatient. Her rage was known even before the tendrils of madness found their way into her mind. But now she would make them all pay. First here in this land of technology, then south where she would war alongside her general once again. So yeah, probably killed thousands of Chirians. I'm sure this whole city got cooked. And with regard to the general, Styraatu is referring to Aatrox, who many of the Darkin consider their general. You really won't find any Darkin waking from their weaponless slumber without the intent of uniting with their general, and an overall hatred of Xolaani. Guess they really don't like being controlled through blood magic. Which really brings into question the next Darkin, Naafiri. Naafiri's story begins with her ancient spirit trapped within a throwing dagger for centuries, enduring a waking nightmare of impotence and consumed by regret over how easily she and the other Darkin were tricked and sealed away. Eventually, a human treasure hunter finds her dagger, and Naafiri attempts to possess him, calling nearby Doonhounds to create a distraction in the hopes that he will touch the blade, allowing her to possess him. However, the hounds attack and kill the man, and in the ensuing chaos, Naafiri's consciousness shatters and spreads, becoming one with the entire pack of dogs, her mangled dagger embedded within each. Initially, she resents her new hosts, disliking their instincts, smell, and need for companionship. Over time, however, Naafiri learns the profound wisdom of the pack. Individually, they are vulnerable, but together, they are an apex predator. This realization helps her overcome her bitterness as she understands that the Darkin's past failures stemmed from their personal grudges and inability to act as a unified entity. Naafiri now seeks to find and unite her Darkin siblings, intending to share the pack's collective wisdom and restore them to their former, dominant glory by working together. Which, I don't know. They seem pretty unified under Aatrox, and honestly, she may even agree with Xolaani since they would be pretty unified under her. Maybe she means the general disunification of the Darkin during the Darkin War, probably implying that. But the Darkin, at least in the current lore and time, don't seem to be opposed to working together. Definitely don't mind serving under their general Aatrox. But there are more Darkin weapons scattered all over Runeterra, so let's get to those. Next, the Darkin Staff. The Bandlewood seemed a perfect place to hide a darkened weapon, they reasoned. Bandlewoods are by their very nature impossible to navigate, and the Yordles would know to steer clear of such abject malevolence. But the Targonians failed to realize the efficacy of such strange magic and the effects it would have over the local flora. Baalkux felt the tree's limb grip the staff inside which he lay dormant. Quickly, he gripped back. His life erupted from the darkened staff and coursed through the tree's ancient boughs and branches. There was no heart to control here, no blood to bend. Baalkux could finally return to his general and atone for his past transgressions. The no blood to bend is clearly a nod to Xolaani, so my guess is Baalkux was controlled by Xolaani in the previous Darkin War, but now he intends to serve Aatrox, and Xolaani would have a lot of trouble with Baalkux since her blood magic wouldn't work on him. Another one, the Darkin Harpoon, which they just launched into the Strait of Duray, and Bilgewater literally has a rhyme for this place now. Steer clear of the Strait of Duray, where the waters whisper and the winds betray, where sea beast and birds so seldom foray, for fear or the darkness deep neath the Strait of Duray. And who's at the bottom of the Strait of Duray? Ibaaros, the champion of the dunes. He lifted himself through the water, his blood coursed with the same familiar yearning from years before, to serve, to obey, to submit. Ibaaros' Darkin Harpoon was most likely picked up by a giant sea monster, so that should be fun to deal with. And judging by the to serve, to obey, and submit, he must still be controlled by Xolaani. Another one, the Darkin Aegis, they sent to Demacia. They gifted it to the House of Fortis to keep safe, but the voice inside whispered to a child of Fortis, eventually convincing them to draw the shield. And who was inside that shield? The mighty ascended tactician known as the Aegis of Eternity. Joraal seemed impervious to attack, even for the immortal god warriors of Shurima, but the war against the void raged on, and as resilient as Joraal's body was, it was his mind that broke.
We are surrounded. Do you see? Do you see? It waited in the dark, the void. It never ends.
So Joraal was probably at the front lines battling the void since he was so impervious to attack. Honestly, his story sounds pretty sad, even sadder that he's possessing a child.
I held the line. I held it.
The Darkin Spear they sent to the Freljord, and we see that story unfold with one of Sejuani's generals. And by the way, they refer to her as War Mother. War Mother, the grip of winter has tightened. The Avarosans have fled beyond their outposts. North is the sea, our only path leads east. Do not listen to him, War Mother. That way is the Pale, and beyond it, the Whispering Wilds. I say better to die than face that cursed land. How fortunate for you both that neither must decide my people's fate. True, War Mother. But perhaps there is a third way. Let me travel east. Better a scout is lost to darkness than all our people. She does eventually allow this general to go east, and she ends up picking up the Darkin Spear. And with newfound vigor, the great warrior Anaakca sped south through the Freljord and into Demacian lands. The outpost prepared as best they could to repel her assault, but no mere mortal would stand between Anaakca's fury and the coward who stoked it. So Anaakca, the moment she came to, is headed straight for Xolaani. There's also a Darkin fan which they decided would be a good idea to send to the Spirit Realm. And you might not know Shen, he's from Ionia and has a lot of ties to the Spirit Realm. He states that, in the bridge between worlds, I have long sensed the shadow that pulsed with silent rage. Though I know better than to delve into the darkness after it, the pulse has lately grown stronger, vaster, and I fear the creatures of the Spirit Realm will soon begin searching for it. And eventually one does, specifically a Spirit Realm Dragonling. His general call stirred him from slumber. As his senses came to him, Praa found himself looking through a weighted veil to a lush, unfamiliar land. Slowly, inexorably, he stepped through the divide and buried his feet in Runeterra's soil once more. Another one, the Darkin Lodestone, this one's hilarious. They buried within a hunk of star metal, which interestingly enough is the same metal Ornn used to build the bridge above the Howling Abyss he dug. I'm not saying that the star metal they used to bury her in is what he used, but star metal itself. If you want to know Ornn's story, I recommend my video on how Lysandra doomed Runeterra. The reason the Targonians did this is that they thought an orb of star metal would sufficiently dim her irascible will. But as her general stirred, so too did Horazi, who found even Targon's ancient protectors could be tempted by promises whispered from afar. Horazi was gifted a higher perspective in the burning celestial matter that imprisoned her. She glimpsed the secrets of the cosmos and the infinite passage of time that preceded and followed her existence. She learned so much, and yet her hatred for the coward Xolaani remained. So yeah, burying her in star metal was a very, very bad idea. Then there's the Darkin Ballista, which they sent to the steeps of eastern Valoran, which were known to be barren, unfit to feed or home the Noxie people. But as the centuries fell by, a new empire was founded, hungry for expansion. Fallow lands found new fertility under new farming techniques, and weapons once thought safely buried became uncovered once again. Eventually, a grazing Noxian beast came in contact with the ballista. Ancient muscles flexed once more. The warrior heard her general's call and knew where she was needed, in the lands she once had known as Icathia. Which, can I just say how crazy it is that the other Darkin are swords, shields, fans, sights, while Naganeka is a literal ballista. Always thought that was pretty cool. Definitely wouldn't just bury it in the ground and hope nobody finds it. The Darkin halberd they sent to the Blessed Isles, which, I mean, they couldn't have known has become the Shadow Isles, but still. Straining against the confines of his cell, Taarosh heard his general's calls. He would answer it one way or another. And legend says Taarosh was mere moments from destroying Xolaani when the Darkin were set upon by the Targonians. As centuries passed, he sensed the land around him become corrupted, tainted with rot and a perpetual stench of death. How he dreamt of steeping Xolaani in the same suffering once he'd claimed his freedom. So that's clearly the transition from the Blessed Isles to the Shadow Isles, which involves Viego. If you don't know his story, I recommend my video titled The Lich King of Runeterra. Taarosh's host is a dragon from the Shadow Isles, possibly a Camavorian dragon. Which I am aware that seems pretty bad, but this could have been even worse. I mean, the Vile Maw is on the Shadow Isles. Could you have imagined if this thing came in contact with the Darkin halberd? Which I don't totally blame the Targonians on this one, because the Blessed Isles was used to hold many magical artifacts, including the world runes. But the moment it changed to the Shadow Isles, they should have gone and picked this one up. And it keeps going. The Darkin Scythe, they just buried somewhere in Noxus, eventually unearthed. Zed sent Kayn to obtain the Darkin Scythe in order to prevent it from ever being used against the wary defenders of Ionia. He accepted without hesitation, never questioning why he had been chosen for this task. Indeed, where any other acolyte would have destroyed the living scythe known as Rhaast, Kayn took it for himself. Now that is really interesting. This is in his canon bio, by the way, saying that any other acolyte would have destroyed the living scythe. If an acolyte could destroy it, you better believe the Targonians, who literally trapped them in their weapons, could have. So why just ship them all over Runeterra? In order to make the Targonians' actions even somewhat make sense, this portion should be retconned. Kayn now wields the Darkin Scythe of Rhaast, and he is the only one of few in Runeterra who have been able to withstand the Darkin's control. He wields the sentient Darkin weapon Rhaast, undeterred by its creeping corruption of his body and mind. There are only two possible outcomes. Either Kayn bends the weapon to his will, or the malevolent blade consumes him completely, paving the way for the destruction of all Runeterra.
I will decide the way.
We shall see.
Another Darkin that you're actually probably familiar with is Varus. In the past, he used this crystalline bow to assassinate enemy commanders and champions, helping the Darkin defeat entire mortal armies with ever greater ease. Eventually, Varus was cornered by the Vestayan Moonwalkers and human mages in service of a golden armored warrior queen of Valoran. They bound him within his bow, leaving him to howl in impotent rage. By then, the raw, corrupted influence of the Darkin was known, and yet still the queen chose to wield the deadly weapon in the final days of the war, gladly sacrificing herself for a greater victory. So the Targonians taught this golden armored warrior queen how to imprison Darkin. She imprisoned Varus and then immediately equipped him. In the months that followed, the queen carried Varus to the First Lands, those that would later be known as Ionia. Now made monstrous by the bow's power, her last act was to command her followers to bury her alive in a lightless well, sunk deep beneath a mountain temple overlooking the village of Palas. And there Varus was imprisoned both by the natural magic of Ionia and the ritual ministrations of the temple guardians. Which isn't the first time we've seen the natural magic of Ionia imprison something that's volatile or destructive to its nature. We see the same thing with Syndra. I talked about that in my last video, which goes through the spirit trees of Ionia. The bow did remain hidden until Noxian invaders attacked, leading two beast hunters, Valmar and Kai, to the temple. In a desperate attempt to save the mortally wounded Kai, Valmar brought Kai into the well, inadvertently unleashing Varus, who consumed both hunters and reformed into a new Gestalt body. Now, this new entity is in a constant struggle between Varus' malevolent Darkin influence and the lingering will of Valmar and Kai, leaving the fate of Runeterra uncertain. While Kai and Valmar were not the first to bear the bow and host Varus' inhuman power, they were the first to remind him of his lost humanity.
We've been many things, honored, forsaken, cursed. But above all, we started as men.
Another one you're definitely familiar with is Aatrox. When the Targonians began to fight the Darkin, Aatrox was front lines. Despite his strength, eventually Aatrox was deceived as he became one of the first Darkin to become imprisoned. Trapped within his sword in a torturous existence, Aatrox continued to hopelessly reach out of his prison in agony. Driven by desperation, Aatrox, trapped within his sword, eventually possessed the mortal, using hemomancy to shape the body into a crude imitation of his former ascended form. He then roamed the world, continuously consuming and transforming new hosts to sustain himself, all while searching for a way to break free from his cursed prison. Upon realizing true freedom was impossible, Aatrox descended into despair and resolved to unleash an apocalyptic cataclysm, hoping to end all existence, including himself.
I am the world ender!
This new destructive purpose led him to wage war across Runeterra, culminating in an attack on Demacia where he faced the Wing Protectors, Kayn and Morgana. Though he initially overpowered them, Morgana's dark magic restrained him, allowing Kayn to strike him with holy flames, seemingly defeating him and his army. Although he's not truly defeated, the mortal he was possessing just lost his grip on the weapon, so Aatrox's spirit was returned to the weapon's prison. In another moment, on his quest to achieve oblivion and enact vengeance against the aspects that trapped him, Aatrox traveled to Mount Targon and terrorized armies of barbarians on his way there, driving them into Targonian lands. Seeking to reach the mountain's summit, Aatrox faced off against Pantheon and confronted him in battle. Aatrox actually achieved what was thought impossible and stabbed his sword through Pantheon's chest, wounding him so deeply that he carved the constellation of War out of the cosmos, essentially killing the aspect. Only the aspect's host Atreus remained, spitting in Aatrox's face as he sneered and left him to die of his wounds. Now, did he actually kill the aspect of War like the actual aspect, or did he just force him out of Atreus's body? I'm not really sure. As we do know, aspects have mortal hosts everywhere. I mean, a previous host from the aspect of War was killed by Aurelion Sol, and yet he goes on to possess Atreus, so I think the aspect of War is still alive, but Aatrox pushed him out of Atreus's body. Eventually, a fully recovered Atreus returned and stood between Aatrox and an army of barbarians, wielding the now fallen aspect's dulled spear and shield. Aatrox mocked Atreus for being foolish enough to face him without the powers of Pantheon and fought him, casting Atreus down to his knees. Before striking the killing blow, Atreus managed to awaken the residual celestial power within himself and reignited the powers of the Pantheon, leaping into the air and severing Aatrox's sword arm, defeating him. If you want to know more of the story of Pantheon, I have a full video dedicated to him titled The Greatest Warrior in Runeterra, which I truly believe Pantheon is.
They are called gods, but when they die, you cannot hear their howls above the wind.
A final moment of note for Aatrox was during his rampage in the Freljord. One night, Aatrox flew across a snowstorm and appeared before Tryndamyr's clan, who mistook the Darkin for their horned god, the Iron Boar. As some of the tribespeople began to kneel and pray, Aatrox immediately began to slaughter them, as Tryndamyr looked on in horror before raising his blade and attempting to strike. Aatrox swatted the barbarian aside and nearly beat him to death, speaking archaic words and laughing manically as he succumbed to his wounds. As he lay on the verge of death, he was revived by a rage he never felt before, his willpower and thirst for vengeance preventing him from dying. In essence, after the duel with Aatrox, Tryndamyr was given a blessing by the Darkin that granted him abilities far above that of a normal human. This includes accelerated healing, as Tryndamyr can regenerate his body from what normally would be considered a fatal wound through his willpower alone. And the reason Aatrox did this is that he wanted Tryndamyr to be his next vessel. When you kill Tryndamyr as Aatrox in League of Legends, you get this voice line.
I taught you my next vessel, Tryndamyr. Pity. You failed even to become a slave.
Okay, the final Darkin we know of in the current lore is Xolaani. Where we left Xolaani, she had almost been defeated by Taarosh before the aspect of Twilight intervened, sealing all remaining Darkin. For several centuries, Xolaani was kept in Mistfall, locked away in her bloodletters. She would eventually be discovered by Master Yi and his order, and sealed away within his temple. Kayn, who had discovered the weapon's location, attacked the temple, seeking to claim the power of a second Darkin weapon. I think Kayn was manipulated into attacking the temple by Rhaast. I think most likely he is against Xolaani and wanted to destroy it. I don't think Kayn wanted a second Darkin weapon. He struggles with Rhaast, so it's pretty arrogant of him to think that he can control two. Maybe he's just that cocky.
You speak of balance as if you've mastered it.
I need not make peace with my parasite, as you have. You are the tool, I am the weapon.
Lies to ease your feeble mind.
The result of this attack, though, was the death of all of Yi's new order, with the exception of his protege, June. Unable to handle her failure, she gave in to Xolaani's whisper, taking up the blades to try and save herself and her master. In an instant, June was lost. Xolaani completely claimed her as a vessel. After acquiring a body, Xolaani would make her way back to Shurima to grow her power at the Altar of Blood, an ancient temple maintained by her devoted disciples known as the Darkin Thralls. Xolaani's thralls are implied to be survivors from before she was imprisoned, as they could not yearn for a control they did not yet know.
Peace through servitude.
They treat her with a deep degree of reverence, their sole existence to serve her. This is represented by their intended use in the game Legends of Runeterra as sacrifices to summon Xolaani into play. Xolaani in turn seems to treat them with a degree of kindness, though this does not prevent her from enthralling them all the same.
We have waited so long, Xolaani.
And now peace is just moments away.
Xolaani, peace through servitude.
At the same time, Aatrox would attempt to rally an army of Darkin to finally kill their most hated enemy.
Darkin, awaken! General, you're alive. A curse we shall both break this day. You are soft, Varus, weak, too human.
At least I remember my lost mortality.
Old friend, let us embrace oblivion.
I am ready to watch existence die.
Taarosh, did the coward try her tricks on you? Yes, General, but old scars remember their lessons. Ibaaros, old friend, let us end this. What is this banter magic, Baalkux?
This time, Xolaani was able to hold her own, defeating both Taarosh and Horazi before they could stop her ritual, breaking their wills and enthralling them. With each Darkin she enslaved, Xolaani's power grew greatly. Her influence was vast enough that when Aatrox arrived, she faced him head-on.
I remember this place and the endless blood. There she is! The coward of Icathia!
Closer, Aatrox. Come to me.
Xolaani, I will break you on your altar!
Her new form able to hold him off, while still defeating other Darkin. Now this could continue to be true or retcon. I'll say this, Mahira isn't dead, and in this future story it looks like she returns to fight alongside her daughter, Kayle. As the battle waged, Xolaani only grew more powerful, and the very land began to be corrupted. The aspect of justice, Mahira, descended to the world with a divine army to end the battle, aided by her daughter, Kayle. Sensing the threat posed to the world, she sent a messenger to call for Rise.
My messenger reached you then. I am glad.
If you had called on me sooner, we might have time for pleasantries. You would destroy all this for your peace?
It is the only path, and so I gladly walk it.
Enough, Aatrox! Stop this madness!
Madness is exactly what I will end, Rise!
You must be Rise. Bow to your queen.
You're not the first to ask me. You won't be the last. Xolaani, I have seen your statues. The people loved you.
They will love me once again, as will you.
Despite holding the power to end the conflict, he hesitated, unsure whether it was right to act, as he would need to use the world rune of madness.
What right do I have to use a world rune?
You are responsible for their use, none other.
Are you and I the only ones standing up to this madness?
Who else can, old friend?
The Ascended thought they could best the Void. How far they fell. War. It breaks the best of us.
While he racked his mind for the answer, Xolaani would defeat Mahira and possess her. Bursting from her physical form, Xolaani's power would reach its absolute peak.
Why do you look on me with horror, child?
Monster! Usurper! Relinquish my mother!
It pains us to see you act on retribution alone.
You will see what I know of justice! You do not deserve to bear her visage!
We are one, Kayn. We are your mother.
You make a mockery of all she stands for!
We are nothing if not divine.
Ultimately, Rhaast would deem that the world deserved to be saved, and would use the power of the world runes to defeat Xolaani. I personally hope that we deal with the Darkin the riotmmo. We start the riotmmo with them sealed in their weapons all over Runeterra. This could be a great expansion later in the game, a few expansions in that takes us to the old world as the Darkins begin to emerge. So now you know the Darkin, where they are buried, and a potential future we must prevent where Xolaani controls all of Runeterra. Use this knowledge to forge a new future in the riotmmo. And we're back. Hey Zillion. Took them through the complete history of the Darkin and some potential future events. They should understand the Darkin enough to deal with them in the future riotmmo.
I see you picked up a little more than knowledge. A bright future, just as I have always known it would be.
Phew, well, glad we fixed that. Thanks, Zillion. So, we are going to face the Darkin at some point, and with the help of Zillion to make this video, you should be ready. And one last thing, you probably noticed a big gap since my last video, and I want to thank you for your patience. I promise I wasn't just AFK. I've been pouring all my time into creating something special for our community. I'm incredibly excited to announce that RiotGrove.com is now live. RiotGrove is a new hub for everything Riot games. Right now you can find news, patch notes, community forums, and guides for all of Riot's titles, including a dedicated section for the upcoming MMO. But this is just the beginning. I've already built the back end for a powerful analytics page which will go live as soon as we get our production API key from Riot. We're also planning community tournaments where you can earn unique titles and badges displayed across the site. There's even more in the works, like a complete universe section that isn't visible yet. My goal is for RiotGrove to be a place where we can all come together to meet, discuss our favorite games and worlds, and find new people to play with. Please go check it out and join the community. I can't wait to see you there. If you like this video, throw a like, subscribe for future Runeterra lore videos. Massive shout out to those joining the channel. It means a lot to me, seriously. Thanks for stopping by the Grove, and I will see you in the next one. Now I'm gonna go make that demon lore video. Although Zillion number 2's comment at the beginning of this video didn't make me feel too great about it. Wait, didn't I already make that video? What? How?